Yeah, I mean, our app icon looks like an old
Did I just
Bible.
draw myself? Hold on. Did I just put ink all over my lips?
I can't tell.
I was chewing on a pen, and all of a sudden, my mouth tastes odd. Let me get some more. Jeez.
Yeah, no, we're seeing the trend, and we believe that is one part of it.
I have ink on my hand. Sorry. The first things first. Do not touch that pen again. You got another one for me, Dirt? Oh, this ink. It feels like Novocaine. It numbs the lips.
I have no idea what you just did to your body.
I don't either. Do you see? Do you still see?
You got a little spot on your tooth right there.
Oh, gosh. This is horrible. Welcome to the Aggressive Life. I had a conversation with a guy several months ago, and I said, would you please be on my podcast? And he said, yes, I will. His name is Bobby Gruenwald. He's not related to the Griswolds. I don't think he's related to them, but he's more brilliant than them. He's created and sold companies. By the age of 23, he was recognized by Fast Company as one of the most creative people in business. He's part of one of the most creative churches in the country, known as Life Church, the first church that really pioneered having sites all over the place and video teaching. Everyone wants to lay claim to they invented it, but the guys who really systematized it and went after it was Life Church, based in Oklahoma City. And then, Bobby's like, you know what, this stuff, there's not enough creativity here. I need to do other stuff. I know what I need to do. I need to be a part of getting the Bible on the app in Apple, which if you've been around for a while, know that was a radical departure for Apple because Apple got their clock cleaned by Microsoft and Bill Gates. I know you look at Bill Gates right now, you go, that guy's such a geek. He couldn't clean anybody's clock. He actually cleaned Steve Jobs' clock, and he cleaned his clock by having code software, and everyone could innovate and build on top of it. So Apple comes in, and they say, hey, we're going to take a page out of that geek's book. We're going to actually do apps on the phone. We're like, what? And maybe I should have Bobby tell the rest of the story, and then we're going to jump into other things I can't wait to. Bobby Gruenwald, welcome to your Aggressive Life.
It's good to be with you, Brian. I've been looking forward to it.
Oh, you have not. You say it to everybody.
No, I have been, actually. Ever since I met you and we spent that time together, it was fun. I've been looking forward to being on your podcast.
Well, I want to get into why I was so stimulated when we were together. But first, some back history. Take us back to the YouVersion. You're the guys who put the Bible on the Apple app. That was an aggressive move. So let's go way, 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 way back there. What was your thought process? What's happened in the midst of it?
Yeah, so it actually started originally as an idea that I had in the O'Hare Airport in Chicago. It was back in 2006. It predated apps, predated app stores. For whatever reason, in the TSA security line, I'm just sitting there thinking, I wonder if there's a way to use technology to help me read the Bible more consistently. I thought I was a below average Bible reader. People have since corrected me and said, if you're thinking about reading the Bible more, you're probably an above average Bible reader. From just thinking about it. But I didn't feel like I was engaged at the level I wanted to be. And so I had this idea for a website. Again, it predated apps. And it had some novel features, none that are worth diving into on the program. But I came up with a name for it, YouVersion, registered the domain name before I got on the airplane that day, and just I have lots of ideas. So that doesn't mean we're going to do it. It just kind of means I've kind of thought about it, thinking about it, processing it. Ultimately, we did build that website, and it failed. Like there was a whole lot of work that went into it, a whole lot of effort, and realized just a few months in that it actually didn't change how I engaged with the Bible. But through the failure, we processed why it failed. Felt like if we put it on a mobile device, it might make a difference. And so we redesigned it to work with a BlackBerry, which most people have no idea what a BlackBerry is, but it used to be the predominant smartphone for quite a period of time.
Which was called a crackberry back in the day.
Exactly,
We were addicted
people
to
were addicted to
right.
you wore them on a holster on your belt. Like
Right.
there's a whole different way to even carry your phone, like a pager, basically. And so that actually worked. Like we could see, this is now early 2008 when we put it on a BlackBerry. And it was just profound. Like it really actually worked. We were engaging with the Bible more. We could see the traffic going up. And then Steve Jobs comes out in March of 2008 and announces this thing called an app store and the ability to develop apps for this new phone that had just come out a little bit earlier called the iPhone. When the iPhone first came out, you couldn't download apps.
Right.
It just came with what was on it.
Yeah.
So they announced the launch of the app store. We just said, well, we should try to build a Bible app based on what we see happening. And so we found a 19-year-old on our team because none of us knew how to build a Bible app. And he loved Apple, and that was about all you had to be back then was 19 and love Apple. And so as a part-time nights and weekends project, worked together to build the first Bible app, submitted it to Apple. Honestly, not really sure if they were going to approve it. We're like, well, Apple want to have a Bible, in their app store. And then on top of that, we really didn't know how many people would develop apps or, how many apps would be in the store. So the day that it launched, July 10th, 2008, the App Store launched and the Bible app was in the first 200 free apps on the day that it launched. And we were just blown away. It made it in the store. We were blown away. There was only 200 apps.
Now, there was
apps.
only 200 that were submitted, or you got picked as a top in the 200?
A really good question. I don't actually know the answer to that. I presume it was only 200 submitted because I wasn't hearing about people not getting approved.
Okay.
But they approved a couple hundred apps. I mean, they weren't all very good. I mean, there was only just a few ones that were good in the mix. But it made it, and we saw 83,000 people install it the first weekend. And then we've been kind of on a big journey since then, watching that number grow.
And it is how many right now?
Right now, as we're recording this, it is 900 and almost 940 million, and we'll pass 1 billion later this year, the billion milestone.
Unbelievable. 1 billion. 1 billion people. That's crazy. Of the billion, how many people are doing it every day? Or how many people a day? That's 1 billion people. Every day. How many people?
So just to kind of help with the numbers, so it's 1 billion devices, not 1 billion people.
Okay.
How many devices have you had in the last 17 years?
Right.
And the answer is probably a few. But we have about 230 million registered users. That's much more close to a unique person number. Yep. But even then, you don't have to have an account. You don't have to register to have an account to use the app. So there's more people on top of that. On a monthly basis, it's about a little over 70 million active users monthly. And then the number drops down to about 17 million daily active users. And those are kind of a true daily active users.
Yeah, that's down.
Yeah.
You got issues, man. You got to start doing something that has some fruit. 17 times a day. You only have 17 million people a day reading the Bible. All right, Dirk, maybe we should end this right now. That's kind of...
We're working on it. It's opened about 1 billion times, just 1 billion times every 40 days is how often the app's open. So it's growing. It's getting, and the cool news is those numbers are at all-time highs, meaning this is not an old story that we can talk about in past tense. It's an ongoing story that's still continuing to grow.
When you started, did you have a numerical goal?
No. I mean, sometimes I do have big goals, but this was one of those projects where I was just trying to see if it worked. And I would never have been crazy enough to predict it would be what it is today, at least not at that point. Like I didn't have that kind of faith when we started it. Obviously, our faith has grown on what we think is possible. We have a big vision today, but that's because how could you not after you've seen what's already happened? But at that time, no, I like 83,000 the first weekend. I mean, if you had made me put a number on paper, I wouldn't have guessed that in the first year, let alone the first weekend. So it was a big deal.
I always ping pong back and forth between goals and numeric goals. Generally speaking, I don't set numerical goals. I look for barriers. They're keeping growth. I knock down barriers, and then I find growth happens. But sometimes I find that, numerical things are good, but most of the time I'm actually demotivated by numbers instead of motivated. So I was curious with you, how would you stack in that general tension?
I mean, for me, it's a little bit of both and. Like I'm always looking at the obstacles to growth, just kind of what you're talking about. Like what are the things that are impeding us from growing? But I do have a philosophy that you really need to have a vision, and at least in some way capture a vision that's massively bigger than what you already have and than what your past has been.
Yeah.
If you don't, your mind share is pulled backwards and not forwards. So you can think about it like gravity. If gravity is like, if you oversimplify the concept of gravity and say it's a larger object pulling a smaller object towards it,
Yeah.
I think the same thing works with our mind share. Like if we are a church, for example, as you're mentioning in your intro, our church has multiple locations and we have X number of people that attend our church every week. It'd be really easy as the church has grown to say, man, we're a large church, we're a big church. And we start looking at what is. If we don't have a vision that's so massively bigger than what already is, then we'll be pulled inward. Like we'll just naturally be thinking about the history, the past, like what God's built or how big this is, and we won't be propelled outside. So a church planter in a city knows they've got nothing to lose and everything to gain, right? Because they've got nobody attending their church, and they're
Yes.
just tackling a brand new city. So numbers matter to some extent to be able to quantify a vision that's bigger. So like right now, we have a vision that's much bigger than 1 billion installs. Like I have a 10-year kind of concept that we really believe it's a stretch, but we think we'd be over 3 billion by 2033. And I feel like if I didn't have something that kind of anchored how big that was out there, that you'd almost be inclined to stare too much of what's already happened, and it wouldn't grow. So I don't know, I kind of use both, but then candidly, what you mentioned is also super effective. It's like, so trying to get there, like what is holding us back? What are the limiters and how do I remove them?
I think the main thing is that you just have an energetic push. I mean, that's what the numerical goal is supposed to do for you. It's supposed to give you something to rally around. Well, if you can rally around and have something that pushes you to take action, that's really the important thing versus the number.
I think that's fair. There's different ways to, I think, capture what that bigger vision is. A number is one way to do it, and it's effective for some people to quantify it in some fashion. But I do think there has to be a picture of it somehow, like not the specifics, but something that is pulling you forward. And at least for me, I found that to be pretty practical and even as a leader to be necessary.
How much is your success with YouVersion? How much is that you were first to market? How much it is the quality of the product, do you think?
There's no question that being first to market, there's a first mover advantage that comes, but I don't know how you 17 years in sustain a first mover advantage. I feel like that has its window, and we're like well past that window at this point. So I think it's we've got to make a quality product. We have to solve a problem, meaning we have to like actually have it be relevant to the people we're trying to reach with it. And if we lose touch with that, then we've kind of lost everything. We are very focused. I mean, it's free, completely free, not free to make, but free to consume.
Yes, right.
And but I never wanted to be free for a reason. Meaning from the very beginning, it's like, guys, we're going to make this high quality. We're going to provide tech support. We're going to do things that you would never get in a paid app. We're going to make it way better than what you would get if you paid for it. Because I don't want this to be, well, it's free because, the quality is what it is, and no excuses on that front. So we've set the bar pretty high, and I think we hit it. I honestly feel like there's so much more room we have to grow, and we're constantly kind of challenging ourselves to make it better, particularly in other languages and other contexts, because in English, it's decent. But I think we can be better, as we get into Arabic and all these other languages. So we're working hard.
It's decent.
It could be. We have pretty high standards, so I'm never very satisfied. But I've never been that way. I've been that way my whole life.
That's my next question. That's a quality of yours, and would you see that as a blessing or a curse?
It just depends on which angle you're coming from with it. I mean, I think it's a blessing that drives me to not settle and not coast. I still find myself susceptible to that, from time to time, but The curse part of it is it's a little bit of both. I think there's a tension in it. There's times where I like wish I could sort of unsee something, or I wish that I could not care, because it would be a bit of a relief. Just candidly, I mean, I think that's just kind of this internal tension that I live there with. Yeah, so I mean, it's a good question. I generally think it's positive because I feel like it's positive in the sense that I can see fruit from it and how God's used it. I think the rest of it's more of an internal tension that causes it to be negative.
Yeah, well, my drive can definitely be a curse to people who are around me because they think, would you stop, just be happy. Yeah. Be happy where we are. Why? You know?
Yeah, I didn't answer from their perspective, but yeah, you might ask somebody else around me what they think about that.
But it can sometimes cause me and maybe you to not have a attitude of celebration, an attitude of gratitude, ability to kind of just celebrate what God has done. Is that a problem with you or not?
No, it definitely is. We are historically terrible about celebrating things. I mean, we had the 500 million milestone. I think we had a dinner with 30 people. That was our party for celebrating 500 million.
And they had to pay.
Yeah. Well, actually,
at McDonald's. Oh, Chick-fil-A. Sorry, Chick-fil-A.
Yeah. I don't know who paid for that, but I will say that it was pretty anemic by comparison to the reach. And most of it's because, man, we're just unsettled. Like we're like all about what's next and what's coming next, and don't spend time. We are going to make something of this billion milestone, and mostly for the Bible, not really for us, but just to kind of make it kind of a cultural moment for the Bible. So we've gone from not celebrating to having an arena event, and we're declaring November to be month of the Bible month is what we're declaring it to be. And we've got Amazon Prime and all kinds of people joining us to celebrate Bible month. So it's going to be kind of a big deal, and we'll see where it goes. But we're hoping that the people that don't read the Bible, that don't know much about the Bible, will be drawn in to say, what is going on here? Why are so many people interested in this, and where's all this energy and momentum coming from? That's kind of our goal, is to kind of create a cultural moment for it.
How old are you, Bobby?
I am almost 49.
Almost
48.
49. Okay, and do you think this is your final gig?
No. I don't know what another gig will be. I'm here and committed in that regards, but just looking at my past, I always feel like God brings new things, and not necessarily new places or new jobs, but just new ideas. So I don't know. So my instinct would be saying, no, I think there's more, in me. But I'm also, if this is what God has for me to steward, we're going to do it the best we can with it and grow it to as big as we can. I can't think of something else I'm wanting to do right now. Let's put it that way.
Well, I think that's part of the complexity or conundrum that those of us who fashion ourselves as entrepreneurs or creatives or initiators or whatever you want to look at it as is, what's the line between improving and innovating off of where I currently am now instead of starting something utterly brand new? I don't feel tempted at all to start something utterly brand new, but I do see in myself, I just regularly keep starting things that are another spur of the thing I've already done. And I was curious if you navigate those waters at all.
I have to have outlets for that energy because I have a lot of it.
Yeah.
So I find ways to leverage some of that ideation and that kind of gift. But I also, I'm responsible, to steward and lead this right now. So I'm not alone in that, but I carry that weight pretty heavily. And so there's stuff that comes with that. There are times where I wish I was a little bit unfettered and could just go do something completely new and different. But at the same time, I'm like super grateful that I would even get to be a part of this, let alone lead it. And so there's the tension's managed mainly by finding outlets to kind of leverage that energy. And almost all the time it's adjacent or connected to the thing we're doing. Like it'd be kind of silly to not leverage the scale and the things we do to kind of dream about ideas and possibilities that can kind of take advantage of that to get lift. But it's not limited to that. I mean, I my ideas float around in a lot of different areas, and I usually just freely give them to whoever wants to take and run with it. That's sometimes how I get to accomplish it.
Well, speaking of freely given, let's talk about your monetization strategy, which is giving away for free. How did you get there, and why is that the right thing for you?
Yeah, so the background on that, prior to this idea in 2006, our church really felt led to give our intellectual property, our creative resources, curriculum, anything we develop as a church, give that away for free to other churches. And we started that in March of 2006. And we had no idea at the time that profoundly changed us as leaders. We thought this would be a benefit to others, and that was kind of the motivation to do it. But we actually
in 2006, that doesn't sound so radical right now, but in 2006, we were the same way at Crossroads. You had everybody hawking their wares. Like you could get free porn, but you had to pay for a sermon.
Yeah.
You had to go and buy, crazy. That was one of our things. We should be able to reverse it. You get free sermons and you have to pay for porn. Actually, we didn't do anything for the porn, but yeah, it's very common. Go and pay for some guy's sermon or his manuscript or whatever. So that was pretty radical.
No, it really was different. And a couple of things were colliding at that same point in time that made it possible, which in fairness to the other ministries that didn't do that prior, is that broadband penetration was kind of starting to reach some meaningful levels right there in 2006. So the ability to download a full quality video or curriculum versus having to put it on a DVD and sell a physical product, that was right there kind of at that tipping point. And that was a factor, right? Because if you had tried to do it 3 years earlier, you pretty much had to make a DVD. And if you're going to make a DVD, you're going to sell a product, right? Because you're not just going to give away DVDs, or at least it'd be problematic, right, to give it away in that format. So that we were helped by that. But yeah, that became the foundation, because we started to see it really changed our posture around generosity. We started to just think about how we could do more of that, and that became a foundation. So when the idea for YouVersion came later, it was just understandably going to be free. We just knew foundationally this needed to be free. And the same premise you just mentioned about porn, at that time frame, you had people that couldn't fathom paying 99 cents for a song that they loved from a band that they loved.
Yeah, right.
And we were asking them to pay $25 for a digital copy of a book that they didn't understand. And so the economics of that don't make any sense for that audience. And so we're we got to come up with a different model here. And the Bible really needs to be free. I actually thought it was free when we started. I didn't realize that people own the Bible translations. And,
right. Yes.
And so that was the first eye-opening part of the journey.
Which is why anytime you want to get it, you get the King James version with these and thous and the thithers, because someone owns all the other ones, all the good ones.
Yes. And ironically, even the King James, you would not, most people probably wouldn't know this, is claimed under a crown copyright in the Commonwealth, meaning they still claim a copyright to it, even but the United States and other parts of the world don't usually recognize that. But that's a whole side conversation. But nonetheless, you're right. That's the reason King James was so popular, is because it was distributed without paying royalties, within the United States. So it's very easy to print King James Bibles and to distribute them. So yeah, we felt like it needed to be free.
And it's, to be clear, it's the one true valid inspiration and translation by God. We should just make sure
it's the original source text.
No. It is the original, and it is the inspired word of God. The King James, only the King James. I'm about to get offended here. I'm about wait. Who we have on this pod? You don't believe that the King James is the one valid, verified, authorized by God translation?
You're going to get me in trouble with a whole group of people. I'm
getting myself in trouble with it, and I'm willing it.
I will say that the King James is probably one of the most, if not the most, impactful translation of the Bible ever, in history, because of what it impacted. But yes, you're right. There are people that believe that's the only translation that matters, and everything else is subpar. Fortunately, we give people the option to choose. So you've got like 80 plus translations in English to choose from. King James is there.
King James isn't even a translation. King James is the Word of God. He's not even a translation of it. You'd rather have that than, I'm not kidding around, man. Are you not?
Yeah.
Are you not spending time with people who are fully devoted to the Word of God?
I am excited, Brian, that you're a King James only guy. So it's good. It's good to hear.
All right, enough of that. Keep going. You're good. This is a good problem.
So we knew that from our standpoint, it needed to be free. To do that, though, candidly, we had to have the cooperation of all these publishers, the people that own the Bible text, and that was not a small task, because I get it, man. I'm from a business background. You spend millions of dollars creating a translation, you need a return on that investment. So we had to get really creative with how we added value to them, but stayed non-commercial, like in our approach, because we felt like both things had to happen. And we worked really hard to help the publishers build a relationship with people directly, which was part of the value prop that we brought to them. We didn't have that at the beginning, but we kind of discovered it as we went. But to give them credit, I mean, I think it's an entire industry that pivoted to say, okay, we're going to make this core Bible text available digitally for free. That's effectively what the entire industry did. And most people think the Bible publishing industry is not very progressive, or very, forward thinking. But I got to give them credit. I mean, it was not the way it was when we started. It transitioned to that effectively maybe 3 or 4 years in. So over about a 3 or 4 year time frame, they kind of, for the most part, changed. They obviously still sell Bibles, and print Bible sales are actually doing really well, which was also one of the premises where, like, look, if you could get a generation of people excited about the Bible in this digital format, that's going to create opportunities for all these other products, that these publishers have. And, and it's also going to create donors in the case of people that really love a particular translation. If it's a not-for-profit that owns it, great. And so we've helped connect donors to these Bible translation groups. We've helped for-profit publishers find customers. It's just been a win-win for everybody. But at the end of the day, the Bible text itself has been freely available to people through the app. So we couldn't do it by ourselves. And obviously we have donors ourselves to support the work we do. But in addition to that, it took the publishers to come alongside and make it happen.
Is every major translation right now on YouVersion?
Yeah, every major one in English is definitely on YouVersion. There are a few languages that we have some holdouts on some of the popular translations, but that's okay. We just kind of, over time, they tend to come around. So we have just a few that are out there that we don't really have the ones we'd like to have. We have we have 2,000, over 2,200 languages covered with the Bible text. But some of the larger languages, a few of them, we would prefer to have one or two translations we don't have access to yet.
Okay, so all this is background to building to the two things you were saying that I've continued to ruminate on, and I want you to school us on this and give us your latest and greatest. I'm sure your thoughts have evolved since we spoke months ago. So topic one is you mentioned it right now. The print Bible is doing well. You're seeing a resurgence.
Yeah.
A massive uptick in the Bible, and you think it's a reaction to AI. Start sermon.
All right, this is a setup that God's doing. Like, I can see it, and I don't know if everybody else can, but you have this emergence of generative AI. You know, the concept of AI has been around a long time, but the reason we're all talking about AI today is because of LLMs and chatbots and Chat GPT. And
what's LLM? Seriously? Oh, learning language models.
Large language models, is what it stands for. So because of this new technology, we're all talking about AI. It became I can go and ask it a question. I can have it do my college paper. I can do whatever. All the reasons that people got excited about it. One of the primary use cases right now for it is to generate content. So using this new technology, you can create video content, you can create image content, you can create scripts for podcasts, you can create text to speech, so you can create a script and you can have it read it and it sounds like a person. And that technology has gotten better and better. It's not perfect at all, but if you go through YouTube, it doesn't take you very long to find an AI generated video. In fact, if you watch one or two of them, you probably have a feed full of AI generated videos, and some cases don't even know it. It depends on who you are and how capable you are of discerning it.
Right.
But
it's amazing on my feed, like how many cheetahs end up jumping out in front of cars in North Carolina. That's fascinating to see. And then an alligator comes up and eats the cheetah. It's amazing. It happens all the time on highways. I've just noticed that. I never known before. Now I notice it.
So what's happening though at a high level is because technology can create content way faster than you and I can create content. It goes from just a tiny little subsegment of the content we see to like overtaking the feeds that we have with a ton of content. And you've probably run into this, I'm sure everybody has, videos that are completely not true, that look like they're true. Someone that you know or someone that's famous, that are speaking are like, I can't believe they're saying this. I saw a Billy Graham sermon the other day that was like a prosperity gospel Billy Graham sermon.
Wow.
And it was his voice, but it's obviously not consistent with anything that he taught.
Right.
It wasn't a secret discovered sermon. It was just one that was made up by AI. And while some of this is humorous, for a lot of people have fallen for this to some degree. Like they've looked at it and said, oh man, I watched that video. I thought it was true. I sent it to 10 people. And then I found out later it's AI generated. So the response to that is we naturally start to really question the veracity of everything that we consume. We used to be able to say, I saw it with my own eye. I know it was true. And now you can't say that anymore. Like that's not a way to verify what's true and what's not true. So some people would be really concerned about this, and I could get that. You're like going, man, what's it like to live in a world where you can't trust anything that you consume, anything you see, online? And that's basically where we're quickly approaching. But that's the setup, because what that also does is it creates this hunger and this quest for anything that you know to be true, that can be true. My 17-year-old son, who actually has a job in AI, like the kid is so smart. He's going to make more money this year than I made 4 years out of college, and he's working part-time. But he's very smart at AI models, and he can do all this stuff. I mean, I have a cloud computing bill, a GPU bill for my house because my son is running all this stuff, and he's got a great job. He's going to make quite a bit of money this year doing it. Even he, who lives in that space, is totally put off by AI-generated content. He can see it like in an instant. If he's watching YouTube, skip that video. Don't want that video. He's like, Dad, stop watching that. That's AI generated. It's like, how do you know it's AI generated? He just doesn't want anything to do with it. He looks for human generated content. That's what he's drawn to. And content that existed outside of this space, so the repercussions of that is you've got a young generation that's AI native, that's growing up where they can actually recognize this. They can see the things that are fake, about the content they're consuming. And they're turning to print Bibles. Why? Because there's this substantiveness to the print experience that is different than the digital world and the content they're inundated with. The Bible itself is totally unique in this space because you can go back thousands of years. Like this November in the Museum of the Bible, the Dead Sea Scrolls are going to be on display, or fragments from the Dead Sea Scrolls. So you can actually go through and look and confirm that it's consistent, what we read today, with what was in the Dead Sea Scrolls a couple of thousand years ago. And so if you're looking for anything that has substance or truth, which is exactly what the setup is right now, like this is the environment that's being built, the Bible shines. Like this is a moment where the Bible's like the antidote or the answer, I think, to this moment in history that we're in. So it's like a perfect placement right now. And we're very, very excited about it. You see Gen Z at the same time is more open to these questions about spirituality. They're more open to the Bible. I mean, there's study after study that's happening globally. In fact, the print Bible sales numbers, not just up in the US, in the UK, 89% among Gen Z print Bible sales are up in the UK. This is like an area that's
up 89%.
Yeah,
in a quote unquote post culture. Yeah.
Yeah, it's considered a post-Christian world, and there's a study in Australia that is talking about, I think 80% of Gen Z were actually open to the Bible, like they view it as something they want to consider. Which, if you go to the millennials, just before that, it probably was flip-flopped. So there's just I think this is a cause and effect. Like we see AI driving sort of a behavior or response to it. And so I don't think it's a bad thing. I think it actually is kind of bringing more clarity to what we have. But there is a lot of noise that comes with it. And then like any disruptive technology, there's always going to be some positive things and some negative things, right, that come from it. I think this is one of the positive outcomes.
So you're seeing an uptick with YouVersion because people trust the Bible, because old. It's we know the source. We know where it's from.
Yeah, I mean, our app icon looks like an old
Did I just
Bible.
draw myself? Hold on. Did I just put ink all over my lips?
I can't tell.
I was chewing on a pen, and all of a sudden, my mouth tastes odd. Let me get some more. Oh, jeez.
Yeah, no, we're seeing the trend, and we believe that is one part of it.
I have ink on my hand. Sorry. The first things first. Do not touch that pen again. You got another one for me, Dirt? Oh, this ink. It feels like Novocaine. It numbs the lips. Now I know if I can't get to Novocaine, just get some raw ink and chew on it, and you can't taste anything.
I have no idea what you just did to your
I
body.
don't either. Do you see? Do you still see?
You got a little spot on your tooth right there.
Oh, gosh. This is horrible. All right. I don't care that I have ink on me. I care the taste. All right. I just want to be able to concentrate. Well, you got something for me? Yeah, go get me a beer or something. Jeez, this is the time for a beer. Go to my office, bring me a beer. That'd probably do it. It's been a while since I had a beer on the aggressive life. All right, where are we here? Where are we going? Oh, okay. My mouth is going numb right now. Okay, so you're saying maybe there's a spiritual resurgence that might be coming for our country that's AI driven, that is a reaction against AI?
I think it's a piece of it for sure. There's definitely stuff happening globally, spiritually, and you can't always put your finger on the cause, other than sometimes God starts to do something in generations, that you haven't seen in generations before. You see it in college campuses. You see it just in a lot of ways, currently. But I definitely think that this is one of the narratives. I mean, one of the pieces of it is that there's a conditioning or a cultural dynamic that's happening that this is a predictable reaction to that, I think. And I think that it plays into the numbers we see. So, so I think it's an exciting time. We're pumped about it. We really feel like this is a moment where the work that we've been doing and leaning into is important. And it's always important, but we feel like this is really important for this moment. And then I'd say the other side to it is we have to kind of be thoughtful about how we approach AI when it comes to the Bible app. Yeah. Because if what I'm saying is true, right, then I've got to be careful that we don't position the Bible in the same category as AI, like the Bible text. Because if it feels like what I'm getting from the Bible app is somehow an AI-generated summary, then all of a sudden it gets tossed in the same category as that other content. And I really need it to be held with a certain level of reverence or respect for the text, like we didn't just AI modify it, right, to do it. So this is intention, right, with how I'm wired, because I'm generally wired with like this sort of aggressive trial of new things and testing new things, and willing to kind of take some steps that have more risk associated with it. In this particular case, it's not as much about risk, and it's more about positioning, and like seeing this as an opportunity to have this in contrast to what everyone else is experiencing.
What I find really compelling about this is your numbers of growth are startling and seems to indicate something about the spiritual goo of our culture. Now, a lot of pastors are going to be offended at this because everyone thinks that they're the exception. But you go down the line of the fastest growing churches, everyone wants to say, well, it's conversion growth. It's not. Come on. It's not. There are. I'm not saying there aren't people who are coming to faith in your church at Crossroads. We've been as good as any on conversion growth. I'm not saying that, but all of us have to be sober enough to say, can we just admit that we're providing a product that Christians prefer over their current product, and they're coming to us. And there's nothing wrong with that. You're not trying to steal sheep. You're growing green grass, and if sheep come to green grass, they come to green grass. So just all I'm trying to say at the level set is a lot of things that are happening in the kingdom of God in America are happening by people who are best in class or better in class than getting other folks. No, but in your situation, this is what's fascinating about me. There's not Bible apps you're competing with. There's other ones out there, really, but when you're showing this level of growth, that isn't because you're doing better stuff than other Bible apps that are coming to you. You've already had that. You already settled that. That's indicating there's something happening with everybody who has an iPhone. I find that fascinating and encouraging.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. I've not even thought about that perspective, but you're right. I mean, we can see a lot of people are turning to the Bible.
You're already only in class. You're already only in class. Not first class. You're already only in class. You already had that, and it's growing.
Yeah. No, I think it's a good point. And that's what we see. People are searching. They're hurting for things a lot of times, and they download the Bible app because they're in some kind of felt need a lot of times, and so they see it in the App Store and think maybe there's an answer in this app, for me. And we can tell by what people search for that that's part of what drives them there. In fact, it's why the topics we put, if you go to our Discover tab and all that, we're trying to make on-ramps for people that are coming from these different perspectives. And so that would also be indicative of what you're describing, right? These are people that had not even considered the Bible before. It wasn't something they knew about. It wasn't like they just switched from their print Bible to, that's another indicator too, right? If print Bible sales were just going in the ground and digital is going up, you say, oh, this is just a movement from print to digital.
It's not.
But print Bible sales are going up.
It's amazing.
From new first-time Bible owners, like it's the first time they've ever owned a print Bible. And digital traffic's going up at the same time, which really plays into what you just said.
What do you think is happening in America that print Bible sales are going up? Because I'm with you. I wouldn't have seen that one because I've been a digital guy for a long time. I actually do read the Bible in the morning on paper, but that's it. And I actually went back to paper about 4 years ago when the Bible talks about you giving up the former things. And I thought, you know what? There was a former thing I used to do. I think I was more vibrant. I should go back to the former thing. That's when I started doing stuff like reading a paper Bible in the morning. I also went back to praying over every chair before every seat before I preach, which we have 3,500 seats where I preach. So I get a half-mile walk-in. I do every other row up and back, and I pray over them all. I did it for a while up until we went to 3,500 seats and I stopped. And I was like, let's get back to that. So, that was preamble to saying, I don't understand paper going up though. That's something because people are reading things digitally everywhere. So it has to be something spiritual is happening. It has to be the Spirit of God's doing something with this segment of our country, right? Or am I being too positive and Pollyanna?
No, you're being right. And it is particularly with younger people. But again, think about the response to this. Like if everything you do is digital, if your whole world, everything you grew up with is digital, if your life is lived out on digital, if your relationships, are centered around digital interactions, you're looking for something that has meaning to it and purpose. And the more that becomes AI generated, the more that you even crave that, and so for some people, the print Bible experience, when I've talked to them, is entirely about removing distractions. They kind of want a space where they can kind of hear from God, and they don't worry about getting a push notification, or they're not worried about getting pulled into Snapchat or something, in the middle of it. Now, there are some ways to do that digitally as well, to kind of quiet the noise of everything else and sort of bring focus to it. But I think that's a surefire way to do it, right? Is to just be able to eliminate that device altogether for that period of time. That's a segment, of it. I think the other, though, has to do with this sort of tactile, tangible, feel to it. And even though it feels a little bit, old school, perhaps to some of us that went from print to digital or whatever, there's an aspect of that is attractive. And and it's not. I don't see it as just a retro trend. Like where
Yeah.
we're doing things like they did in the '80s. I think it is more substantive than that, and more meaningful. I don't know enough to know whether print book sales have gone up or whether just print Bible sales. Because what I tend to hear is that print
Interesting.
book sales have gone down. So I don't know if I have heard a stat that it's just everything's moving to paper and that's the thing. I think it's specific around the Bible.
I think you're right.
And it's not, it's not everybody, obviously, because our data is still going up, quite a bit as well. But I think it's just more of an indicator that fits with the other pieces I'm talking about.
Yeah.
There is a hunger. It does feel like it's a little bit more generational. Like it does feel like it's focused more on younger Gen Z age as the target, not exclusively, but that's where a lot of this momentum and energy is happening. And it's not just the US, by the way. It's very much a global phenomenon. It just happens to be that we're able to see it a little bit better here in the US, which is exciting for those of us that live here. But we've been seeing growth globally and in Europe and parts of the world that you, like I said, wouldn't normally expect it.
And your publishers you work with are saying, Bobby, I got to tell you, man, our print sales going up. You're hearing this from people. This is real, actual, legitimate stuff.
Yeah, yes. And the Wall Street Journal came out with an article a few months ago that highlighted print Bible sales being up. I think it was 22%
That's
last
amazing.
year.
It's unbelievable.
So it's not like the little nominal uptick, it's like it's actually a significant thing. And Bible podcasts are popular, like going through the whole Bible, Tara Cobble, Father Mike, these different podcasts are among the most popular podcasts right now. And I could see that contributing as well to it, because a lot of times you follow along either in the Bible app or follow along with the print Bible, and that's just kind of the way you connect and go with those podcasts. It's a fun thing. It's an exciting thing. If people aren't paying attention to it, you need to be paying attention to it, because I think it's a really positive thing happening right now.
This is really horrible. Bible podcast. I've never heard one. What's the format of it?
Generally, they're different. It depends on which one, but they usually are walking through the whole Bible over the course of a year. So it's just a daily, podcast, and they have reading, and then they kind of unpack the reading. So the host reads the entire passage. Depends on the podcast, but sometimes they have you do the reading, and then you go to the podcast to listen to kind of the sort of way to process it or unpack it and draw out of it.
Interesting.
So it's kind of bringing almost like a coach coming alongside you as you're doing your Bible reading plan. I don't actually follow either of the podcasts, other than I know about them, and we've got plenty of other Bible plans and things that we're engaged in. But I just know that the popularity among them is really high, and we partner with a lot of people that do those. As far as in the Bible app, they also have Bible plans and things that people are using digitally to go along with it.
All right, so tell me, this is great. Anything else you want to talk about with the AI spiritual resurgence? I think this is one of the most tangible and tactile, encouraging things I've ever heard about America.
Well, it's exciting. I don't think the narrative is out there. I think we still have some old narratives, that we're trying to reframe.
Right.
So I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to share about it. On the other front on AI is it's interesting to me how many people still have these dystopian views of AI. Either utopian or dystopian views. They're usually way in the extremes. And I'm yet to find someone that has a really good biblical worldview that also has a dystopian view of AI. Because you kind of would have to displace everything that you know about what happens in the end, to believe that AI is going to kind of destroy the world in the way that it's sort of talked about. So I think it's real hard for me with a biblical worldview to kind of understand the dystopian view. The utopian view is actually pretty predictable. Almost every new emerging technology of any significance usually has this massive amount of utopian perspectives out there. It's just going to change everything, and the whole world's different, and it's all going to be better. We're never going to have to do this again. We're going to never work again. We're going to, all the things that people sort of view as positives. And history tells us that's never that. It's never either of those, right? It's
Right.
always like somewhere in the middle. So I just try to caution people to just, just to kind of be mindful of history. Like, and no matter what people say, well, this is different. There's never been a time like this. This is a new thing. Everyone always says that every time in history about everything that's new, and you can go back and see. So I'm not saying it won't be disruptive. I'm not saying that there's not all these amazing things that AI enables and will let us do. But I just try to be careful not to be sort of caught up in the hyper doom loops around it.
All right. The other thing I wanted to have you say more about was we talked about I would call it or some would call it a come to Jesus moment you had with some of your staff or some of the staff at Life Church. And the background was Life Church, in case you don't know, is one of the most respected churches in the nation. Craig Rochelle is a machine as far as ministry output and far as discipline and innovation and the whole thing. And I mean, just a banner church in multiple states, most sites of any church, highest attendance of any church. If we put all those together, just phenomenal. One's up one side, down the other. And you had some thoughts for some of the campus pastors that I thought were really good for all of us to hear about getting settled and just feeling there isn't new ground for us and all that. Can you go back and replay that for us?
Yeah.
Not because we're trying to out somebody in that content, and we're editing this too. So this is not some gotcha podcast. We can edit anything we want, but that drive, that like, hey, let's see the stuff. That's I want to get that out there.
Yeah. No, I think and it's not to be specific or pick on just our campus pastors. I think this is just like a general principle, but it's a pattern that I see happen over and over again, and I am not immune to it myself, because like it takes me sometimes hearing things I say or hearing things that the people closest to me say to remind me. When you stop growing or when you settle into effectively flat or low growth, which all of us at some point in time have found ourselves there. I mean, maybe, when you get in those modes, natural things happen, patterns happen. I start to hear things like saturation. Maybe we've reached a saturation point, which I think is the craziest concept. Like, if you really think about it, basically it says there's nobody else out there that needs Jesus, nobody else out there that needs a church. We've got it all covered, the whole place, and no one really believes that. But that's what you start to say when you're out of ideas, when you've stopped kind of
Right.
believing that there's something else that could happen. We also just we're not aggressive and we talked earlier about goals and about numbers and all of that, but there's no reason that I can think of that we should ever not be expecting to have solid double-digit growth in almost anything we do every year, and we have a couple of things that we're growing right now that have double-digit growth on a monthly basis, month over month, but certainly year over year. But we kind of just start to believe, that's not possible. And what happens, especially when you're part of a bigger organization, is there's kind of a safety zone where if you're not like in the problem people, that are like really underperforming, you get a bunch of attention. Or if you're not the people that are really crushing it and growing things at high level, those folks tend to get the attention in most organizations.
Yep.
And the middle gets ignored. And that place sucks, man. That's a safe place. That's kind of in the middle, and that's the place where you get very complacent because you're not getting any negative or positive attention, and it's really easy just to kind of settle in there. And what I think what you're referencing that I told our campus pastors is like, I can't imagine waking up 10 years from now and looking back at the last 10 years and going, man, I just settled for that. I just I'm in the same place I was 10 years ago, effectively, like nominal increases or nominal changes. Like, what did I do with the last 10 years, of my life? And if you're not going to steward it, let's give it to somebody that can. Let's make sure that we're really, like we have to do it. It's the parable of the talents. I mean, it's effectively the same thing. We oftentimes would get to a safe place. There's not a lot of pressure, good or bad, and it's so simple.
Keep
when you're
keep what I have, and don't try to take anything.
Keep what I have, and I'm not going to take a risk. I'm not going to, to be bold and say this is what we're going to do. I'm probably not capturing all that you and I talked about that night that you're drawing me back to. But yeah, I mean, we have to be moving forward, or we need, like, the picture I had of this for YouVersion was 3 or 4 years ago. We were effectively doing that. Like, it was like single digit, low growth annually. The numbers are still really big, but the growth rate was really small. So it's very, very easy to hide in the big numbers. It's like I could have been on your podcast and you'd be talking about the numbers we have and celebrating them like they're these huge milestones or big things that are going on. But I would know in that the data, like, I know the real core data is not moving, not growing fast enough, and it should be. There's no reason it couldn't be. And I started to hear the same thing. I heard a couple people talk about saturation point. Maybe we're at saturation point. I was like, that's a cuss word. Like, we do not talk about saturation points because it's ridiculous. It's crazy.
Well, saturation point for the way your ministry looks right now, maybe, you know what I mean?
Yeah, possibly, but not for the need or the opportunity or the potential, you know. And so yeah, so we would just, we were settling into this, and it felt like we were coasting. And like, I, as a leader, was coasting. And candidly, like, being a founder of something, starting something, it's really easy to run around and talk on podcasts and tell a story, and that's like not a bad gig, you know, just like, let's celebrate this thing. It's
Except
a cool
I'm
thing
not paying you right now, so that is a bad gig.
Yeah, well, it's still not a challenge because there's no risk to that, you know, and there's no, like, I'm not making a statement to you that I have to go back up now, you know, by just going and telling this story. So I felt like we just weren't taking enough risk, and that was part of the problem, and we weren't steering it well. And that parable of the talents was one of those things that I really felt clearly about. The question I asked was what did the guy with 11 talents do next? That's what I asked the team.
Ah, interesting.
You know, the guy that had 10 got given the 1, right, from the wicked and lazy servant, and I had 11. And the question is, what did he do next? And the answer is, we don't really know, but you presume he went and risked it again, because you just saw what happened when you didn't do it. But way too many times, when we have any level of success, we reach a point where we stop risking.
Yeah.
A lot of times, like, we just say, well, I mean, now there's a lot more at stake. I've got 11,
right.
You know, and that was not what we're called to do. So the other analogy I use is my Tesla. I have a Tesla I drive, and the regenerative braking on it kicks on right when you let off of the gas. You can set a parameter differently, but for the most part,
I didn't know you were struggling with your masculinity. I'm sorry. We should have taken it a whole entirely different place. All right, go ahead.
I have a bigger gasoline vehicle too, but that's but anyway, but it regenerates the power when you let off the accelerator, and so effectively, the way it works is, if you're not accelerating, you're slowing down. There's no coasting.
Interesting.
In the Tesla, and I feel like that's sort of the same. That was the picture that I had. It's like, if we're not accelerating, then we're slowing down, like we're coming to a stop. And so we don't get this privilege of coasting. You know, there is no such thing. Yeah, if we're not accelerating, we're going backwards. And so that became what framed a few years ago this real big push for me to change my role, to hire some really special people, and to really get aggressive at growing YouVersion, including taking a big risk and financial risks and things that we hadn't been doing up to that point. We were doing about 40 million new devices installing the Bible app, which sounds really impressive, you know, about 3 or 4 years ago. And it sounds impressive, except when you start talking about how many new devices people get and updating devices and all that, we were just barely keeping above the waterline, you know, on it, like just kind of churning.
So they retired old devices, got new devices.
Yeah, exactly. There's a part of that that's just a baseline that's under there.
Right.
And that's why some of the other numbers were not growing. But this year we'll have more than 150 million devices in 1 year. So it went from 40 million to 150 million.
Wow.
But it took us taking a bunch of risk and venturing out there, and I declared where we were going publicly. You know, I said, this is what we're going to do. We're basically projecting effectively solid double digit, like 20% annualized growth rate for the next 10 years on big numbers. And so
Wow.
I mean, I know that you're not big on the future numbers thing, but what it did though is it basically says, look, I'm going to put that out there, and we may be wrong, but I'm going to be wrong swinging. I'm not going to be wrong being passive, and it'd be way easier for me just to kind of hold that close and say, I'm not going to tell you what our numbers are. I'm not going to tell you what we're aiming for. I actually think the numbers are small when I look back on them, but nonetheless, they were way more aggressive than where we were at the time, and we're hitting them. So we'll see what God continues to do, but the team's working really hard.
Oh, I'm for numbers in the right context. I gave one our most recent push, which looks like a campaign. Said, hey, 10 years, we want to be 500,000 people, and we've done every single thing we've ever said we were going to do in 28 years. So we're going to be giving towards. We're going to 10x our church, 500,000 people.
I love it.
50,000 people connect with Cross, not every weekend attendance, but that was a tough one, because you feel as a leader like you're putting it out there, but you're doing it to mobilize action. Just generally for me, numbers don't mobilize me personally, but on that one it does.
Yeah, the story of the Bible app. I don't always tell this part of the story, but not mainly for time. But the website that I told you about. We didn't have permission to use a Bible text, didn't have any relationships with any publishers, didn't know how to get permission to use a Bible text, didn't have any developers on our staff at the time, because we were pretty much hand to mouth as far as the church finances were concerned. So really nothing made sense about this environment to go and build this website. Pastor Craig and I had a blog at the time for pastors and church leaders that was relatively popular. And I put a blog post out in May of 2007. It's out there recorded, in May of 2007, announcing this website that's going to launch, YouVersion.com. It's going to launch in September, and had a picture of what the website's going to look like and the features that were going to be on the website. Some people on my team looked at me and was like, what are you, crazy? I was like, what do you mean? I was like, we don't have a person to develop the website. We don't have permission for a single Bible text. And you're basically saying it's going to launch in September, and we actually had, a reputation at the time. Like, we were doing stuff and our names, it wasn't like no one had any idea who we were or what we were doing. And here was proclaiming this on the blog. Well, I just said, guys, this is how we get things done. Yeah. Like, we're going to do them.
Yes.
And then we're going to go do them.
Yes.
Like, we're going to announce we're going to do them. So what God did, though, is he took that blog post, a guy in Florida that's now one of my close friends, didn't know him at the time, saw the blog post. He called and got a hold of me and had a meeting to hear about the idea. He gets off the call, didn't even ask him to do this, didn't even know he had the connection. He calls Mark Green, who's from the Hobby Lobby family, and he owns a big chain of Christian bookstores. And Mark Green lives in my city. I've never met him before at this time. Mark calls me and says, tell me about this website. So I tell him about it, and he goes, how can I help you? I said, well, we don't have permission to even use a Bible text, and on and on. He makes introductions to the CEOs of all of these Bible publishers. And that leads to us getting our first yes, after we pretty much got no from everybody, but we got one yes. And the point to that is, none of that would have happened without the blog post.
Right. You said it. You declared it. You made an aggressive move.
Absolutely.
Yes, right.
And the website launched in September, by the way, like September 30th. We got the thing launched. It all came together. But so many times we're just so passive about some of these visions and dreams and ideas that we have. And I just found sometimes you just got to lead with action, and declare. And the risk there is we could miss it. We could be wrong. Like, it may not happen. And there are times where it fails.
Right.
And even that website actually failed, after all that work we put into doing it. But we just, I mean, I'd rather go down swinging for something big.
Yes. Yeah. Dude, this has been great. And I'm inspired by you. I know you're on a tight schedule, so otherwise I'd go another hour with you. I feel a connection with you. You're a brother from another mother. I love how you're pushing and succeeding and helping us, not just pushing your thing, but pushing us. And that's exactly what I wanted to have you on, because you're pushing us. So you've done that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brian. Appreciate it. I love the podcast, and excited to be able to contribute anyway. And hopefully, people are challenged to step out there into whatever God's called them to, and to be bold with it.
Is there anything else you wanted to say that I didn't ask you for?
No, I mean, I think in general, with all these things, I mean, there's things we've learned along the way. most of what I feel like my job is and always has been is for me to try to understand what it is that God wants me to do. What's his vision, what's his direction, what's his plan, his ideas. And that's not always hard. That's not always easy to do. Like sometimes
Yes.
it's the foggiest thing in the world, but I feel like if I get that right, I don't really worry about all the rest of it. Like the risk, the resources, all that stuff work themselves out. I think sometimes people get way too hung up on trying to have all the pieces in place and trying to have it all figured out before they start. And that's just not going to ever work. I've never found that to work. And then every big thing that I've been a part of, including YouVersion and things that have scaled, always started by solving a problem for one person. That's where they always begin. I maybe that's just me, but it always came back to something that started way more humble. And then all we did was just kind of keep pulling on that thread and keep, almost like you were mentioning earlier, keep looking where the obstacles are to growth and keep removing them. But it never started with this grand, like we're going to have 1 billion devices that install this thing one day kind of vision. I feel like I would have probably got stuck on day one if that's where I started. Like I would have just been a bit overwhelmed with the bigness of it. And there's a journey that comes to it. And so you kind of have to keep your feet on the ground and kind of keep remembering sort of what you're trying to do and accomplish. But when you do that well, I've seen God do it multiple times, not just with YouVersion, but in other areas as well. And so anyway, just want to encourage people in that way, because there may be people that feel a little bit intimidated by the scale of certain things, and just know that's not how it started. And that wasn't even the vision, for it. That's just where it grew to.
Bob, if someone wants to follow up with you or see what you're doing or anything like that, is there any website or social media account? Give yourself an advertisement. If you don't want it, then great. Just say no. Just go do the YouVersion and go pound salt.
There's really not too many places you can go find out more about me other than just Googling, because I don't do a lot on those platforms. I mean, you can reach out to me on LinkedIn or Instagram. I've got accounts there, but I'm a little less active at trying to post what's going on in my world. I most of the time just stay focused on what I'm doing and then get to talk to people like you about it.
Love it. Hey, man, you've been an inspiration to us and me. You did it both times when we hung out months ago and today. Very helpful for me. Thank you. Thank you for the time and your deposit you made in me. It's really good. And folks, I don't know if you know it or not, you just got some gold dropped into your lap here today. And it's a matter of what you do with it. We say it all the time. You can just treat this as another podcast you fill time with and fill information with, or you can treat this as a podcast that says, no, I'm going to freaking go do something different. I'm going to make a move here. So you got some fodder. Do it. We'll see you next time on The Aggressive Life. Thanks for joining us on this journey toward aggressive living. Find more resources, articles, past episodes, and more at briantome.com. My new book, a 60-day devotional called The 5 Marks for Man, 60 Days to a Powerful Life, along with all the other books in the 5 Marks library, are open right now on Amazon. Be sure to leave us a rating and review wherever you listen to your podcast. Then send an email to dirt, that's dirt, at briantome.com to get a free Aggressive Life sticker. Find more on Instagram at briantome. The Aggressive Life is a production of Crossroads Church, Cincinnati, Ohio.